actually being live, so we'll just like stare at each other and smile for a minute. Okay, we're live. Man, this has been a wild ride. And we are on the back half of today, SparkLive 2020. This has been so cool. I cannot believe that 5,000 people decided to tune in today. I'm glad my hair is looking nice today because sometimes it goes a little crazy. Just doing a quick check-in on housekeeping stuff. We've gotten great engagement on the hashtags, hashtag SparkLive. Definitely bring the conversation out to Twitter and create a little FOMO for your friends who didn't make it. And if you have questions that you want to submit for the panel, you can drop those right into the sidebar on the left. And please do give us ratings and reviews for every session. We want to make this better every year, but our speakers also are committing time to contributing, and they would really appreciate getting some feedback from you so they can do better next time too. So this panel is going to be really fun. I hope you guys are comfortable with people like ribbing at each other because we've got a lot of rapport among this group. Personal friends who have come to geek out with me. We are talking about transformative talent technology. And specifically, we really want to dig into barriers to impact. And I am joined by our partners and sponsors, Paradox, HiredScore, and PH Creative. Thank you guys so much for making today possible. So first, what I'm going to do is introduce everybody, and then we will jump into the session. So first up is Aaron Matos. Hi, Aaron. How are you today?
Doing great, thanks. Thanks, Kyle.
Thanks for coming. So Chief Executive Officer and founder of Paradox, kind of a big deal. You founded because you saw an opportunity to transform the recruiting experience for organizations and for talent by freeing up people's time from mundane tasks, especially with the power of assistive intelligence. So Aaron is an experienced entrepreneur and recognized technology leader. His passion for recruitment has driven him to start successful companies in the TA technology market, which have served tens of thousands of clients and millions of job seekers. And yeah, I mean, I'm just so thrilled to have you here, Aaron. We have never had a chance to like sit down and have some of these conversations. So I'm really excited to see what you've got to share today.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for joining. Okay, next up we have Athena, who has been to my house and I've been to her house. We've met each other's partners, so we're pretty fast friends. I met Athena, really funny story actually. I have a very crazy zany friend, we all have them, and he has no idea what I do for a living, but he was having a burger at a bar down the street from me in Austin and said, "Oh my God, I met this really cool startup CEO. You have to meet her. She does what you do." And I'm like, "What? No, there's no way you met a TA tech entrepreneur." And then sure enough, I meet her and I'm just like, yeah, fast friends. So hi, Athena. I'm so glad you're here today.
I'm thrilled.
Yeah, let me get you introduced here. So CEO and founder of HiredScore, which is an artificial intelligence HR tech company that's powering the Fortune 500. HiredScore leverages the power of data and machine learning to drive deep recruitment process efficiencies, enhance talent mobility, and help organizations move to a fully optimized TA function. So prior to founding HiredScore, Athena was actually an investor in New York City, most recently at Alteris Capital, where she managed and sourced business process automation and healthcare investments in a highly regulated data environments. Prior to that, she was an investment banker at Bank of America Merrill Lynch, and focused on public technology and media companies. So, hey, Athena, thanks for coming. And then last but not least, we have Cher Murphy. And so Cher is the Chief Product Officer at PH Creative. Cher considers herself an anthropologist, an organizational development geek, and a reticulist. I don't know what that is.
Well, we can talk about it because it's going to come up in your. It's boundary spanning and bringing together solutions from different parts of economic environments.
I'm learning from you already. This is why you're here. Really cool. Well, so the business world is a canvas for creativity. Her work is cultivating what's possible for individuals and for organizations. She spent the last 20 years building and leading teams in high growth organizations, both as a consultant and an internal leader. So working with people and talent organizations, she's learned that it's key to align the people strategy to the business strategy. Very well put, Cher. Welcome to the panel today. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me, Kyle.
And then, of course, hi, everybody. If you haven't been along for the entire day, I'm here. I've been running this since 10 o'clock my time. I'm getting worn out. I'm the director of strategy here at Beamery, and I get the really cool job of talking to people like you and finding out what you're working with, what challenges you're encountering, and translating that into new offerings here at Beamery to make sure that we are powering a better world of talent for you. All right, so for the conversation, drop any questions you have into the chat, tweet about us at SparkLive. Otherwise, we're going to jump into the Q&A. We're going to talk to these technology experts and discuss these questions about who owns change management and like what skills and competencies TA should be bulking up, and honestly, just how to get the most out of what we've got. Sound good? All right, so first question we have up here then is future of work. What a tired term, right? We have been opining on the future of work for a long time, and the four of us have been to countless conferences between us. I'm sure we're getting a little worn out by it. It's not going anywhere. In fact, if this year has shown us anything, it's that there's only one thing we can be sure of with the future, which is change. We've also learned firsthand that transformation is certainly within reach when necessity requires it. What I would love to do to start the conversation today is ask for you, what is your view on the future of work? How has it changed this year? And then maybe we can talk a little bit about how you're applying that to your work in driving talent transformation with your customers. And I am going to pick on Athena first. Why don't you weigh in here, Athena?
Sure. So I do love this topic. And I think when you ask kind of what's changed this year, I don't think a whole lot has changed. I think the order of the organization and the acceleration of items that might have taken a few more years to reach the maturity that we see overnight a depth of focus on. So if I were to break down, Kyle, what are the things that we've been working on with some of our most innovative clients, but not yet broad market, or that other companies thought they needed manual processes or better data or better things in place before they tackled. And now it's saying the needs are too urgent to wait for systems, data perfection, human processes owners. I'd say it's diversity and inclusion. And talent acquisition's role in hiring diverse talent and comprehending what's hindering or enabling that agenda. I'd say it's internal mobility and talent retention, specifically around using data that, again, when I look at our most innovative clients, we've, for example, connected learning and training system data for them, mobility, understanding. But that was only a very small minority of companies. Now we see a much greater acceleration of, if we have that data, how do we use that to unlock new career paths in the org? And I'd say the last piece is flex barriers. We have seen over the last few years a number of companies realize that people that work for your company or at your company, whether it's perm talent, flex talent, alumni, retirees, people that flow in and out, all need a tremendous experience and to be optimized and utilized to the best of their potential. And I'd say now we see that barrier coming down of how talent acquisition and talent advisory can tread across that barrier, and instead of find the best perm person, or internal person, it's find the needs that suffice what we as an org need. So
absolutely. And necessity has been a huge part of that, right? It's not just sitting around as a thought exercise and saying, wouldn't it be neat if we could do this? Instead, it's like, we got to do this. You know, you look in healthcare and they had to like just go out and please find as much as their alum to come back, nurses, you know, to come into ERs and take care of people who were struggling, fighting for their lives. I think that the concept of talent was just completely blown up over the last, what has it been, 6 months? Okay, really cool. I actually would like for each of you to answer this question, since it is such a table setting one. So Cher, maybe I can come over to you. What's the definition of how's your view on future work changed this year? How are you applying that to your work at PH?
Great. We've been talking to clients in our communities around the fact that the future of work arrived on March 13th, that Friday when most companies and tech companies really started closing down their offices. And so it arrived, and we've had to then look at, you know, what is this new future? You know, PH being both a tech and a consultative company, you know, we've looked at it really holistically. And I think what's been really important has been this combination of HR, IT, and workplaces, right? Like there's this new org that didn't exist. You know, we're talking about talent technology, but we're talking about technology, and then the whole, you know, revolution of remote work versus flex remote work and what that's going to look like. We've also been working with our clients and really introducing concepts around virtual reality, augmented reality, and what a huge place that's going to play for us in the next year as well. So I think the last piece on the human piece that the change has brought about in the future work has really been around instead of tech or talent, right? So as much as I talked to heads of TA, and originally it was your teams are becoming smaller, so you need to increase your tech. So it was an or, and now we're really starting this place of and, or together, or unity, that how technology is really moving us, is working together with the structure of people and change and communication to create something that we haven't really had possible before.
I think that's really well put. And Aaron, I would say that's a really nice way to tee up the work that you're doing over at Paradox. So same question, how's your view on future work changed, and how are you been applying that this year?
Sure. I mean, it's been obviously an interesting year for everybody. We've obviously, I think, seen organizations change on a dime that might have taken years and years to change before. I mean, I think there's some general trends that aren't going to change. I mean, our view is technology is always going to be doing more and more work in the process that currently people are doing. So we're always going to be looking for efficiencies through technology, and that's always going to come to bear. I also think, you know, this year saw a huge swing in that a ton of, you know, organizations went work from home on a dime, and then figured out, hey, we can kind of do this. But here we are 6 or 7 months later, and you know, I think there was a little bit of recency effect here, that people were just making decisions based on what happened last month. And you know, in some ways, I think we're going to get back to the future of work. Because we're going to end up changing back to having, I think, what will be a really clear hybrid role of we're going to get back to in person. It will happen. The world will turn around, the sun will come up, and we'll get back to working the way we used to work, but also working in this new way. So I think there's going to be this interesting hybrid that evolves, and it'll be interesting on how tech plays into that. But we're really changing jobs. We're just changing how people are getting work done, and that's true at frontline roles, and it's true in professional roles. Some organizations have had an easy time with this. If you're a software company, you change like that. Others are morphing, and so I think you're right in that it's going to be all about change. But I think we're going to, you know, the pendulum will swing back, and I think the leading organizations are trying to figure out what that's going to mean when it happens.
I think so. Now, several of you have several is all three of you. So all three of you have actually called out the most innovative companies, the progressive companies that you get to work with. This is actually why the three of you are here to speak to this topic, is because you get to work with the ones who are out ahead, who are thinking differently, who are trying to be more, right? And so I would really love your perspective on how we navigate this change. Specifically, you know, we have all seen that 2024 is some consolidation in the HR tech market, massive ecosystem of solutions, but there are still countless vendors in this space. And a lot of them are touting some like silver bullet AI enterprise grade platform, blah, 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 that can solve all our problems. But you're working with the smart ones. And I would really like to know, how are the savviest, most progressive, innovative talent teams cutting through the noise? What questions are they asking? What things are they prioritizing? Yeah, who wants to go first? I'm open. Athena, I started with you. I'll come back to you. Let's do this.
Sure.
Don't be bad.
Sure. So I think, Kyle, there's you know, a generalist at everything and a master at none, one size fits all. And for many companies, if the scope of your problems, the size of your teams, the size of your data, the global complexity of your org is more on the basic level and more simplistic, then you probably just need something to get from point A to point B, and something is good enough. I'd say the Fortune 500 that we're lucky enough to work with, and kind of those most innovative clients have asked a different question, which is, what do we need, you know, a neurologist to do the brain surgery for, versus a general medicine and an internal medicine to just generally diagnose the patient before we send them. And I'd say that's where, you know, that we live in of candidate to job matching. What does it mean to not match someone well? That means that person doesn't get considered for the role that they desire. That can also mean OFCCP, EEOC problems and complications. That can mean an employee who thought they should have been considered gets excluded. So I think when you start to think about this, the severity of just the curve of risk of doing that with something that doesn't understand the importance of what does that not being done well, or what does that being done at a really base level mean? And I'd say the other two biggest changes we see with those kind of clients is an understanding that they want an ecosystem that works well together. And we've had a number of times, actually, it's when Aaron and I work closely, when Beamery and HiredScore work closely, where you have to, as a vendor, think about yourself. Instead of, I want to do all these things, think, what are we best of breed in? And then how do we share? So HiredScore sends grades to Beamery. Why wouldn't we? And we send logic levels to Paradox, and Paradox sends stuff to us. And so this exchange of components of what our systems, because at the end of the day, it's not about what features do I have versus you have. It's what are the KPIs and goals of the client org we need to drive. Exactly. And I think vendors that fail to grasp that you might need an ecosystem and an army to move big numbers in a dramatic way in a short period of time. And the client has kind of figured out that when and where they want to bring those specialist armies in.
Yeah, I think that's really well put, and starts to hammer on, I think, one of the persistent challenges we see: expansive ecosystem, or I would say landscape, really, not ecosystem, because most vendors out there are not very good at being ecosystem minded and ecosystem friendly. Really solid point. Cher, maybe I can come over to you next, and we'll just keep going with this cycle. So Cher, what do you think? What are you seeing as what questions are these companies asking? What things are they prioritizing?
Yeah, I really just want to echo everything that Athena said, that it really is about what you said, this landscape, and that companies are really interested in the larger, I don't even want to say initiatives, right? Companies now know their purpose, where they make impact, and they're focused on how to have employees feel like they have belonging, right? That's basically kind of what we've learned through a different part of this future of work. And in order to have that happen, right, to be executed, it takes technology, it takes people, and it takes change. And you said before, who's responsible for change? And I think that there are lots of different parts of the company that are responsible for change, and you cannot do that unless you have that ecosystem. And the ecosystem is about, do you have the APIs? But it also is, are all of those partners aligned on what the goal is for the client? Because clients are going to ask big, like the larger progressive clients that we work with are asking big questions, like how do we really execute on this DEI strategy that we started in June and committed to, and that all of our Gen Z and millennial and even the next generation, the boomers, want to know how we're going to execute. And then how does that translate that into actions of your TA team? But how does that translate into your technology? And how does that all filter all the way up? So I think it's going to take a lot more than what it used to take, which is, oh, well, we're a small company and we're progressive, so we can take the coolest technology there is and run with it. It's just not going to give companies the results that they have to be committed to be successful in 2021.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think it is definitely us putting on our consultant hats and sitting down and trying to understand what our shared priorities are. And it all comes down to what the customer is trying to accomplish. Now, all three of you know that sometimes you have to pull the customer forward, but if your solution partners are aligned on what the path forward is, the opportunity to sit down and pull them forward and with you is much more powerful than just each one of you trying to pull them in a different direction. Aaron, I'd love to come to you too, especially because I think we talked about it in the prep. I am tired of seeing in an RFP document, what do you have for AI? What is your AI solution? As just like one line in this. And I'm like, what is this? I feel like for you to actually educate and inform is like half the battle. But then you also have the customers who already get it, and you just get to get right to work and do the cool stuff with. I really want to know how you find those people.
Sure. I mean, one of the things we get to do is, and we're blessed, is we are working with some of the world's leading organizations that are trying to transform. And so, they want to change things. And so they're looking at the world from that lens. But, when I look at the organizations that I think are doing it right, first of all, they put their business strategy first. And so you've seen organizations this year completely need to change. And some of that's been reactive, some of it's been proactive. But the talent strategy has to follow the business strategy. So first of all, they have to put that first. When we look at orgs that are looking for innovation, though, they're coming to organizations like HiredScore and us because they're really trying to leapfrog and not just build yesterday's tech stack. And so organizations, I think, pre-COVID and today, are asking this question, which is, okay, I'm on an ATS that was built 15 years ago, and yeah, there's some duct tape on it, but how do we really change our processes that both put the business first and put the candidates first? And organizations have been talking about candidate experience for a long time. It's really been starting to stick in the last few years. We've been kind of worried about, okay, what will COVID do to that? But leading organizations are still putting candidate experience process is easy and respectful. I mean, we think that's the most important thing. The reality is, job search is never going to be perfect. There's always going to be hundreds of applicants for every open job. And so this is a reality, but respect and transparency and authenticity through the process is critical. And the leading organizations they're looking at vendors to say, hey, what's going to be coming next? How do you push that? And then for us, we see them really asking for cooperation inside of the tech stack. I think that's really important. I think organizations that have been built in the last 3 to 5 years come from this, API first, ecosystem first model. And we're all in this to say, look, we're here to solve your problem, and we may do the same thing as one of our competitors over here, but today we have to be cooperative and we have to be partners. And the organizations that I see that are making real progress are the ones who are saying, look, we're going to be part of an ecosystem. We're going to work collaboratively. And we realize you're going to have 8 or 10 providers in your tech stack, but we're going to help you get your job done. And so I think that's a mindset shift, because there is no really one size fits all innovative practice today, because all the innovation is happening on the edge cases.
It really is. But, a lot of the innovation is happening, because I actually will push back. I think that some are recognizing that we have to solve for some of the foundational problems too. We can't just innovate out at the edge. We do have to, especially we're looking at data and automation, we have to get process optimized. We have to get data integrity. We have to have real data compliance strategies in place. There's a lot there. Something you had said though, Aaron and Athena, Cher, I don't know if you guys were on the DEI panel before this, but one of our panelists, I was asking them about the role that technology plays in driving DEI and maybe sometimes places where it gets in the way. And our customer, Sam Ramsey from Balfour Beatty, had called out that a lot of ATSs, and she's not trying to throw shade at any of them, but they were built when DE&I was not as much of a priority as it is now. And whereas talent teams are like pivoting on a dime and changing, transforming overnight to really respond to public pressure and personal passion and executive initiatives, they're trying to adapt their process. The systems remain the same. And Aaron, you had said the best companies aren't building the tech stacks of yesterday. They're really looking forward. And I feel like diversity, equity, inclusion is just such an important intersection of this edge innovation and core, this back to foundations. Cher, I see you come off of mute. You want to jump in here?
And so interesting and such a topic we're talking about all the time. We have a program at Page Creative called Rising Stars, which is bringing in the best fresh ideas for underrepresented minority fresh talent leaders. And I have to tell you that this is a topic for them all of the time, that they're asking questions about how, what is more important, being ethical or innovation and technology. And we had a whole conversation about that this week. The other thing that I always kind of go to when you said innovation happens at the foundation, not just the edge, we're having conversations this year that we would never had when I started as a recruiter, which was, we all think that there's an ideal candidate, and the idea of an ideal candidate actually has bias in it, and John Flasika for Recruiting Toolbox pushed that out this summer for us to really look at all of these things that we learned intrinsically in recruiting that don't fit what our goals today for diversity, equity, inclusion are.
Yeah, I think so. On this topic of transformation, similar to future of work, it's getting a lot of play, right? I don't think any of us believes that transformation is just a buzzword, but I do think that we recognize that a lot of people get lost in the buzz. So let's talk about how we make sense of this. And maybe we can talk about success factors. You guys have brought up a few, you've teased out a couple in your responses so far, but what do you think are the most important success factors for talent transformation? Where to begin, what to prioritize, what to ignore, what to never underestimate? Athena, maybe we can start with you.
Yeah, well, I don't think it's about what products do you begin with or what vendors do you begin with. It's what are your needs. If your needs are, if you've got a big volume and you need to figure out a way to get through that, then how do you bring in the thing that knows how to get through that in a fair, equitable, efficient manner? How do you, I think that the nature of the problems and how deeply they're plaguing you, even the most basic reporting tools usually uncover that. And that should be the roadmap for what is the stack we put together. I think number one, and Kyle, you mentioned something earlier just from the panel and with Cher's comment on something I think worth mentioning, which is there are diversity and inclusion elements of certain products that if you've not been investing in them for many years, you can't solve them overnight. So from where we sit, for example, if you do artificial intelligence and you're a federal government client, you can't have a system that's not explainable, that can't be tested, that can't show it wasn't the source of bias, and can't show what does create differences and are they job related or not. And I think this is a confusion point when a lot of people think about their tech stack and their transformation agenda. They often will start buying systems for one thing. Those systems will turn on AI. They didn't come through the door being vetted as an AI system. Maybe they were vetted as a pipeliner or a CRM without AI or a CRM with an AI that just does X, Y, Z. And then over time kind of activate all these different places. Similarly, if I activated something that was conversation AI that I didn't vet for, is this a high quality, is this a compliant conversation AI? I'm going to usually create problems in the back. So I think almost just as important as where do I start is how do I understand what the evolution of this stack by these existing vendors, or where do I need additional vendors? And how do I start pre-asking the questions of whom else you plug in with for 1 year from now when we're ready for a conversation AI? Let's think about that. Or when we're ready to switch our CRM, let's think about that. So I think that expansion is really important.
Yeah, and none of that, nowhere in that consideration is, oh, how cool is this, right? The shiny object thing, yeah, that'll catch the interest, but I think this is why you guys get to work with so many cool organizations, is you get it. You know, you're looking beyond that flashbang. You're really getting to the business implications. And Aaron, I do want to come to you, but I'm also going to introduce this other question that's in the similar vein, that's coming directly from the audience. So this one's from Dana at Cadient Talent. And Dana's asked, how do you approach adverse impact monitoring to ensure that machine learning tech does not cause disparate impact? Do you conduct that internally as the vendor, or does that kind of impact testing fall back on the employer? I love this because it starts to bring in, you're not just giving them a tool, you are coming to them as an expert and empowering them to get the most out of it, right?
Absolutely. I know Athena can riff on this for days on end. Can I do the transformation question and then the adverse impact piece?
Yeah, jump on in.
Transformation, it is interesting. I mean, I do think in many ways it is a buzzword where organizations are throwing this around, but there's reality in this. This is what transforming from. This isn't never just technology. It's the biggest.
Aaron, you're making a really great point, and I want to make sure it comes through. I think you had just a little bit of bandwidth freeze there, so we might just wait. There you go. I think it's picked back up.
I mean, my point on that was the transformation is never just about technology. It really is about how do you transform your process for your hiring managers, for your recruiters, and for your candidates? How do you transform a process that's, at the end of the day, helping you get talent for your organization to compete? And so technology is just part of that. And the biggest problem we see is companies think they'll update from a 15-year-old ATS to a 10-year-old ATS, and somehow that's transformative. If the entire process is the same, if the RFP is, you have to meet all these exact workflows that we did 5 years ago today, that's not transformation. It's just updating, kind of usually putting a prettier UI on your tech. And the really innovative companies, I think, are throwing, a whiteboard out and saying, look, we will do work differently, and our TA professionals will do their jobs differently tomorrow than they will today. And the tech's there to support it. The tech's not the driver. The experience is the driver. The business outcome is the driver in the transformation. It's not, as a software vendor, like, we're not here to sell software. We're here to help you get some work done and help solve a business problem. Mm-hmm. So the transformation has to be to that end. And that to me, I think, is what separates kind of the leading organizations that are driving change today, is because they're really pushing on, let's look at things differently, because we don't have to do the same work today as we did 8 years ago.
Yeah.
On the bias question, I mean, to us, it's always been about transparency and consistency and consistent process. When we work with Athena, there's just a lot of explainable AI. We've never been a fan of anything that's kind of, quote, quote, black box. Everything needs to be clear and transparent. When we look at like screening processes, we always use BFOQs as a very clear standard process and get that input in multiple ways so that it is a fair process. And then you need to be able to explain it and be transparent. I think that's the key driver to this.
Absolutely. It's probably a good litmus test for who you should be trusting to solve some of these problems too. If you ask them for explainable tech and they're like, they're not prepared to respond, huge red flag there, right?
I mean, I think that's partly some of the tech providers you mentioned the cool thing earlier. I think some tech providers thought it was really cool to have some, deep learning algorithm decide that if I blink 3 times, I'm more charismatic and I'll be better in a services role. Like, this stuff is not going to hold up to any scrutiny. And I think tech can't be put into that place where it's making those types of decisions for us. And I think it's stuff, and Athena can take some of this because I know she's super passionate about it. But to us, it's always been about transparency.
Sure. Yeah, Athena, I'll let you respond to. I want to come over to Cher with another question that's come in here.
Oh,
Yeah,
sure. I'll just say I think there's a lot of misconception that because this technology is new, how we vet it, how we audit it is unknown. That's not true. The same legal standards your humans are held to, the same way that if a recruiter was called in to justify why this candidate and not these two candidates, or why these candidates got missed over, any technology you're using has to do that exact same explain exercise if it's prioritizing, shortlisting, ranking, scoring in any way, shape, or form. So I think just it's more simple, Kyle, which is what are those best of human processes? What's the case law? We have 25 to 30 years history on what you expect, and just that you need to realize that your vendor should be able to accommodate that, not tell you all the reasons why that doesn't apply to them, or that doesn't matter, or they don't need that, or and I think further, we had to develop in-house. We've been doing this for 9 years. You know, what we do is hard. And this is the only thing we do. And this is the only thing we do. And we joke a lot that we could spend the next decade or more and still understanding a person and understanding a job, and the two languages between that, and then how you understand the decision and justify that decision. Like it's very much a journey that bias testing. You have to have battery of tests that show what's the source of bias, what's the source of difference, what's permissible, what's not. So happy to talk more. And just
it's almost like you do this for like a living, you know?
No, never. But I think there's legislation that's already arrived. State of Illinois, City of New York Council is meeting on Friday to discuss mandatory audits for artificial intelligence applied to candidate prioritization and screening. And so I think just the times of we don't know how it will be tested and validated, a lot of regulation will clear that up, which I think is a net good thing. So employers can progress with this tech with the confidence of what it will look for, but your vendors should be able to provide you with that support.
Yep, they should be. Well, I mean, God, we really could have had a whole session on this topic. Cher, I actually want to come to you because as PH, you do have also a blended approach. Each one of you as panelists are experts in your field and have that consultative engagement with your customers, but PH is literal a consultancy in digital marketing consultancy. And so you do already just have that technology and strategy blended into your engagements. And one of the things that I know that your CEO, Brian, has talked about before is attracting the right talent in. And I'm just curious about how in this, Aaron had actually called out, we were a little nervous for a moment whether candidate experience was just going to be absolutely like shot in the dark during like this COVID experience. We're all just like, you know, it's going to go right back to the wayside. How are we thinking about attracting the right talent now? How are we thinking about engaging and meeting people where they are? Because this isn't something that just is happening on a recruiter one-to-one basis. This is on our career site, in our messaging templates, et cetera. I'm just kind of curious about how your clients are approaching that.
Yeah, definitely. So, you know, that's kind of the beauty of PH because we are a consultancy. We have 13 tech products as well. But what's really interesting about repelling the many, compelling the few, which is kind of what we believe about attracting talent and looking at employee experience. And you're right, in June, you know, or May, we were thinking, okay, employee experience is out the window. We're going back to a strategy-based market, not a talent-based market. And then we kind of had that switch through the summer after George Floyd and the beginning to dismantle systematic racism. And we came back to the talent piece. And what's really interesting, if you really want to start about recruiters, right? Because I don't want to just talk at the top level, but recruiters through this period have had to learn how to do multiple different things that we're already starting, right? They have to be able to talk about the company stands for diversity. They have to be able to explain their culture and what add rather than a culture fit, right? They have to be able to, and this, you know, idea of an ideal candidate, and they have to be able to coach leaders, not just in the hiring process, but really coach leaders on how to change and how to change their mindset, how to change, you know, what they're focused on. And that is actually, building into this employee experience and how that we see, focus on full employee health. We're working with clients all the time now to talk about mental health and attracting the next generation of talent. And another big thing that companies, we talk a little bit like what's exciting for next year if the future of work has already gotten here, really about how does innovation and productivity, take this new, this next step of innovation and productivity, which is really exciting for attracting talent because they're looking. That's the next thing after a full employee health.
And they want to look ahead, right? I mean, we're all done with this year. I mean, I will say I'm a homebody. I have really loved having COVID as an excuse to say, I can't, I'm so sorry. I'm going to stay home.
You love a good HR tech conference.
Please, honey. I take the week off after. After this, I'm going to put on my sweats and crawl into bed and not talk to anybody for the rest of the weekend. That's just me. So Cher, you really teed me up for my last question here. We're coming up on time. This has flown by. I love you guys. I would love to talk even longer, but let's talk about the fun stuff. Let's look ahead. 21. I think we already see how this. I hope we know how this year is going to start to shape up. We have some clarity on what the future might hold. But let's look past. Let's look at emerging tech, emerging use cases, emerging innovations now. In 2022, beyond next year, what are you as innovators most excited about? And Aaron, we will start with you this time.
Sure. I mean, it's an amazing topic. First of all, if I had the answer of what the world was going to look like in 5 years, I just built it today. So I guess I have two sides. First, we're very biased. We think the world will look combination nature. We think that enterprise software will look much like our consumer tools, like an Alexa area. I think it's going to get smart. Software is going to disappear, and we're not going to be spending as much time in the software. The software is going to do the work. So I think that's the big trend. I think the second piece that's just important is none of us really know what's going to be there in 5 years. And I think that's the interesting question that our clients are all dealing with is, who do you bet on that's going to be innovative and collaborative with those companies that are there? So that's kind of my big push on that is just find organizations that do, I think it's helpful when our clients bring multiple competitors into an ecosystem because that pushes us all to be better. Yeah. And the good ones of us thrive on that. And so we don't view it as, hey, we have to own it all. And so I think that the interesting piece is how do clients future-proof themselves by picking partners that will be innovative and are kind of on their way up rather than on their way down.
Yeah, good stuff. Good point. Athena, what about you?
I think just a more holistic strategy is what we'll see, which is total talent. We don't even like that term. I think that term sucks, but I don't have a better one to say all the different options of how you think about work getting done and jobs getting done and identifying in an instant and also a fair, consistent manner, those who could do that and identify the potential in different ways. And so we're seeing, even that question you asked earlier, Kyle, of like a one solution for all, that's such a ridiculous question. An assessment test, a background check, a conversation AI, a scoring, there's so many pieces, a learning management system, a employee advice and career guidance council. So there's all these different layers, your contingent workforce solution that what we see over the next 2 years is all of that on a data level and on a systems connectivity working for you to help drive that goal of, I have a need. Help me identify within the context of my business prioritization, which could be redeployed talent. Even if I have a better external candidate, if I know I don't want to lay these people off and I want to move them into a different place, can they upskill and learn versus have ready-made talent? Or my diversity and inclusion mandate says I've got to grow from within more than I am today. So I think that convergence on a data and on a capabilities layer and expecting that your systems work for you together in tandem because they will get more complex.
Yeah, right. It's not which one of you is going to solve this problem for me, but I need to solve this problem. Don't get in my way, right? Like we're gonna have to figure this out. Which is again why I'm talking about we're gonna see innovation at that foundational level in order to power this next wave. At least from what I see. Cher, you have the honor of being the last to respond here. What are you seeing looking ahead? What are you excited about?
Yeah, so I'm going to be a little contradiction here, right? So I think I totally agree with what both Aaron and Athena said. And I think there's going to be a focus on community, right? So I think the human part, where what Athena's talking to, is going to become much bigger. We're going to be focused on how people want to be rather than how people want to act. We've seen that with CEOs the whole second part of the year. And I think there's just going to be a bigger focus on the bigger problems, and then how do both consulting and technology get us there. It's really funny, before the 5 forces of 2020 came on, humans had like what, a 9-second attention span, and goldfish had an 8. And now I think we're coming below the goldfish, and a squirrel has a 1 second ability to focus. And he thinks because as we get closer to that, like unable to focus, this community and how we be and how we bring these big questions down together become more important. And I'm really excited about VR and AR just being.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see what happens, especially with online, with events, like being able to do virtual events. I mean, what we're really doing now is digital events. It's not virtual, right? That'll be super cool. Well, I am personally excited to see where we can go together as partners. I am thrilled to be able to have the opportunity to work with all of you. Let's go and do some really cool stuff together. Thank you so much for coming and waxing philosophical and sharing what you're learning, working with the most progressive companies. I love you guys. This was awesome.
We love you too, Kyle.
Thanks, Kyle. It was a great afternoon. Take care.
Yeah, you too. All right, Sparklets. So from now, we're going to go to a break. I certainly need one. I'm going to go wolf down a sandwich probably. I'll see you all back here in 10 minutes. Thanks, guys.
Bye, friends.